Okay, now very often these kind of reports make for an excellent TRP rating or breaking news. But more often than not, it is related to expensive medications rather than faulty procedures. And some time back, about 2 decades back in Khurja, where we lost nearly 200 eyes, after 2 inquiries by the state government, the mishap was attributed to normal saline purchased from a particular private firm, and the court observed negligence on part of the doctor and the operating team. But the court also preached us against regarding asepsis and told us that why didn't you do prior testing of drugs? So is it really possible in a high volume camp or high volume centers to test each of these drugs, which could be a manufacturer's mistake? And finally, the court confined relief to those affected and directed the state government to pay both 12,500 each to each of the victims. Now, the ethical and legal issues are doctor performed these surgeries in good faith and free of cost in those times, of course. But can the doctor be held fully liable for these faulty fluids? So in this course of instructional course, we'll discuss whether the doctor can be held liable or the manufacturer is negligent. And more recently, many of these manufacturers have claimed that this ringer lactate, which they are manufacturing, is not for intraocular use. So he has turned around. And this slide is just to tell you that compensations to the tune of crores of rupees can be granted, wherein one premature girl born in 96 over next few years lost her vision because the pediatrician failed to refer her to an ophthalmologist. And finally, the Supreme Court held them accountable for medical negligence and ordered a compensation to be distributed between the Tamil Nadu government and the pediatrician, and some onus also was on the ophthalmologist that why didn't he screen all the neonates of that hospital. And very recently, this news, February 11th in Hyderabad, doctor and the eye hospital, they are told to pay damages to the tune of 5 lakhs, and the hot potato is this particular drug. And what's the fuss about? Over 150 million injections of Avastin have already been given in the past 10-12 years, and still we are being held guilty of injecting this. So a point here is that in US, which formulates the FDA rules, it is legal to use an off-label drug there. But frankly speaking, having gone through so many of these legal documents, the rules are neither formulated, and even if they are formulated, they are very vague. And even if they are vague, they are not practiced well. Doctors are being arrested irrationally. And if you read the Drug Controller General of India website, it would consider it as not complying with regulations if you are using an off-label drug. But what to talk of IVTA, TPA, intracameral, Vanco and Ligno, none of these is FDA approved for that particular use, but they are being used. So if the court is adjudicating it as wrong, is it always wrong? Now, in this era of litigation and court cases, one cannot escape not to know law. The malpractice suits are on the rise. More than 15,000 cases are pending in the courts. And the doctor-patient relationship, one of reverence, has now gone down to being attacked, and acts of violence are being reported so very often. More often than not, the complainants use these criminal cases either to pressurize the doctors or to extract unjust compensation. And this causes a very serious embarrassment to the doctors. And a white-collared job, going around in circles around the judiciary, forced to seek bail to escape arrest. He may be later exonerated, but the problem is that you have already suffered a loss of reputation which you have built over so many years. And for us doctors, these are routine scenarios of having and handling these complications. Yes, we did everything right as per protocol, in good faith, sincerely, but unfortunately we are not gods as we are made out to be. Things can and will go wrong, and medical errors are an accepted entity. They are bound to occur in any human endeavor. The moot question is whether it was an act of omission or commission. So more often than not, in this era of increasing patient expectations, more patient awareness and litigations, we are in the midst of extremely tight situations sometimes. And then we are going from one place to another, to our relatives, neighbors, anybody and everybody seeking legal remedy, legal solutions, legal opinions. And one can imagine, how can a doctor perform these complex surgeries if you have a medical legal case at the back of your mind? And do we have the time and patience to go around judiciary? Now, the knowledge of jurisprudence, as we call it, is no longer a matter of choice with us. It is imperative for each one of us to know this. And we have a legal duty to comply with. Ignorance of law in the court may not have legal standing. And one must know what constitutes medical negligence. And the adjudicating process with regards to medical professional liability, as far as first is the consumer forums, which is up to 20 lakhs, then 20 lakhs to 1 crore is the regular civil courts, and then of course the criminal courts. And this will go a long way in helping us practice without undue worry. Then how to collect data, dealing with FIR, legal documentation, how to deliberate in the court, and what is the legal terminology. And one, I must say this now only, that you must not speak verbatim or extempore in the court of law. You must always carry a paper and read from it, because we are not legal experts, we may not remember the terminology. Now coming to hiring of legal advisors, which is a very expensive proposition. It may be all right in big centers or a chain of hospitals, but when it comes to solo practitioners, what do you do? And as far as the law is concerned, there is no single window where you can go and hire these lawyers or seek legal opinions. AIOS has a legal cell, but with its own limitations. I think it's still in its infancy. And we have plethora of information at our disposal, but sifting through this again becomes a problem. And one must remember this Hippocratic oath that if we cannot do good, we must refrain from doing any harm. And we, the presenters here, are not legal experts, but we offer before you a rather simplistic view of the legal framework and legal dimensions we ought to know, and to sensitize ourselves to the ever-increasing litigant society. Court mein dekh lunga, I think that's a very common phrase anywhere, on the street, in a doctor's clinic, when there are two erring or fighting parties. And the day is not far when, as private practitioners, the patient will make us pay rather than he paying to us. And ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, before you, a very esteemed faculty from the Armed Forces, led by Major General Mrs. Sagarika Patyal and Group Captain Trehan, to share our views on this dry but exciting subject, and they have some administrative experience as far as these cases are concerned.